Hey everybody, welcome to this session. This session is entitled Introduce Azure to Your Environment, and what I want to talk to you about today is how you can start to leverage some of the features within Azure or some of the products and slowly integrate it into your environment, and not necessarily migrate everything up into the cloud, but start to extend some of those services from Azure onto your on-prem environment and start to grow your cloud maturity and start to understand the way you want to go, the vision that you want to go with your IT department. So hopefully you'll enjoy this session. Now, my name is Sarah Lean. I'm a Senior Cloud Advocate at Microsoft. I'm based in Scotland, as I'm sure you can maybe tell from the accent. I've been in the IT industry for well over 14 years now, and I'm in that infrastructure or sysadmin or IT pro type role, and I have been all my career. I started off as an IT help desk person, answering the phone, resetting people's passwords, unjamming printer jams, all those kind of things, and I've basically worked my way through the IT career ladder to where I am today. Now, I'm really passionate about encouraging the next generation into technology, and I am a STEM ambassador, so I love talking to the next generation, trying to show them the vision and show them where we can go with technology and how that it's, especially to the female audience behind me in the next generation, that it's not necessarily a male-orientated environment. My details are on screen if you want to reach out and say hello. My blog is there, my Twitter handle. I do love meeting new people, and hopefully we can do that sooner rather than later once this pandemic has sorted itself out. Now, a lot of customers I talk to are looking to migrate to the cloud. They are looking to move their environment up into the cloud, and that's driven by a lot of factors. It could be that they're looking to address capacity issues, or they're potentially looking to address hardware or software refreshes. They don't want to spend that money on the, refreshing all of the data center when potentially they're going to move to the cloud at some point. But it's not just all about migrations. As I said in the introduction, it's not just all about migrations. It's about bringing some of those features that you might want to be using in Azure, but you aren't quite ready to do that full migration. And that's what I want to talk to you today about. And I want to take you on a kind of journey with a fictional company that I'm sure you're all familiar with or you've heard mentioned a few times before. And that's Tailwind Traders. Tailwind Traders are our favourite fictional company. They are a retail company, and they're looking to introduce Azure into their environment because they do have some capacity issues with their data centres, and they're also looking to try and innovate with some of their technologies and do much better with how they operate just in their day-to-day management, and also how they can actually make sure they're compliant and consistent across all of their environments. Now, the first project that they want to tackle is the website. So recently, marketing have been doing their job and have been generating a lot of sales, generating a lot of traffic to the website, and doing basically what marketing should be doing. However, that's led to some issues because the current web server is not able to take that capacity and has led to some errors, has led to a lot of negative reviews as well for the company, and IT are stressing out about how they deal with it and are looking forward to trying to fix this. Now, as I said, they have some capacity issues internally with their data center, so they can't just spin up another server, and then even if they did, they don't have the capabilities or a tool that can help load balance that across the two servers if they were to add that. So they've been looking at Azure and how they can actually leverage that, and they've looked at Azure Web Apps, so they're looking at using that as a web server for them, but they want to be able to make sure that they can leverage the kind of load balancing technology between Azure and, that new server that they're building, and also the current server that they've got. So this is where they're actually going to use Traffic Manager as part of the solution. Traffic Manager is a DNS-based load balancer that can help you balance that traffic to different endpoints, whether that be an endpoint in Azure or a non-Azure endpoint as well. And it has various different routing methods, so we can route based on priority, we can route based on geography, and there's various solutions there for them. So what Tailwind Traders are looking to do is implement Traffic Manager alongside a new web server for them. So what they'll do with their domain is for www.tailwindtraders.com, they will look at pointing that via a CNAME to the traffic manager that they've set up. They'll set up the routing algorithms, and basically what will happen is when people hit their website from now on, Traffic Manager will help to route the traffic to the various different endpoints that they have. They'll have the Azure endpoint, and they'll also have the on-premise endpoint as well. And that will allow them to try and deal with some of this load, and also try and deal with the migration of this to a new platform. Eventually, they do want to decommission the on-prem server and move to all Azure endpoints, all Azure web app services. And Traffic Manager will help them do that. There'll be a little bit of there'll be a little bit of an outage when they first point all of their traffic towards the Traffic Manager. But then ultimately, once they do that, they can start to add in extra endpoints to the Traffic Manager profiles, or they can remove endpoints, so they can remove that on-premise server from that load, and eventually they'll have that migration and they'll be able to do it without disrupting customers, and they can deal with the load that's coming to them. So they're very excited about introducing not only Azure Web Apps to their portfolio, but also Azure Traffic Manager as well. Now, as I said, they want to try and look at balancing their operations, starting to look at how they can better manage everything across the board. And they are acutely aware that their server management processes aren't great at the moment, and it is a bit of an overhead for the IT team to have to look after all of these servers. They're worried if they add in an extra environment that there'll be even more management overhead in trying to manage all of these servers. And this is where they want to start to look at Windows Admin Center. Now, Windows Admin Center is a management tool for your Windows servers. It can help you streamline some of those day-to-day operations that you do for your servers. But not only that, it can be the bridge to actually introducing a lot of cloud services, a lot of Azure services that tool traders are looking to introduce in the future. Now, with Windows Admin Center, as I said, it helps with those day-to-day tasks that you might have. So you might have to look at log files to understand why something happened, or you might have to look at capacity. How much disk space does a server have left over? Do you need to apply patches to that server? It can really bolster your operations. It can help you be that single pane of glass. I think when I managed several servers, when I was doing that as a job, it was horrendous some days where I had multiple MMC windows open, I had multiple RDP sessions open, I might have had SCOM windows, or I might have had even third-party laptops, or a third laptop or second or third laptop open to try and connect to all the servers that I had to manage. And I was forever, logging into the wrong server, or maybe potentially even doing something on the wrong server because I just had far too many windows open. And Windows Admin Center really helps you because it's just that one single pane of glass that you need to have open in order to manage all of your servers, and you can just connect to the different ones from that one window. Now, as I said, it doesn't just do those day-to-day tasks for your servers. It can actually help you implement Azure onto some of those services and control Azure as well. So you can create Azure virtual machines from the Windows Admin Center, and you can also enable things like Azure Backup or Azure Site Recovery or even Azure Update Management from within the Windows Admin Center. So if you want a server that lives on-prem with you, backed up via Azure Backup, you can do that enablement, you can do that scheduling via Windows Admin Center. So you don't even have to use the Azure portal to do that. So again, single pane of glass for you to actually do your server management, regardless of where your servers live. Now, it's not just Windows Server that we kind of look after within the Windows Admin Center. We have partnerships with several of the hardware vendors that you can see on screen right now, where you can actually start to manage some of the hardware tasks that you might have for your servers. So if you had to update firmware, or even if you just had to query the serial number of a server, a physical server, then you can do it from within Windows Admin Center due to this partnership with these hardware vendors. Now, what I want to do is show you what that actually looks like. So let's dive into the demo. So here is the Windows Admin Center console. As you can see, it looks fairly similar to Windows Server Manager if you've ever used that within Windows Server, and it's an easy interface to look after. Here we have some servers that live on-prem, and we have some servers that live on Azure. If I connect to that server, what will load up is an overview of the server initially. So operating system type, what processors we have, the performance, how much CPU and how much RAM is being there, the uptime of the server, just some basic information that you would expect to maybe need if you're logging onto a server and you're potentially troubleshooting something. Now down the left hand side is where all the power comes from. This is where we can start to interact with the server. If you need to check the event logs, like I said, to try and understand why something happened, maybe overnight, or why, you know, something isn't happening that you're expecting to happen, you can interrogate the event logs there. Now, if you have to enable something within the firewall rules, then you can do that as well. It's not just about viewing that server, it's also about interacting with it and potentially making changes if you needed it. So here, for example, I want to make some changes to the incoming firewall rules. I want to make sure that I can do a ping request and I get a response back from it. So I search down and I try and find the rule that I want to change. Once I find the rule that I want to change, I can hit that enable button and the firewall rule on my server will change. I haven't had to log on to the server, I haven't had to leave this console. I can do it all from within here. I can interact and I can view what's happening. Now there's a whole host of options, as you can see down the left hand side. We can look at the installed applications, we could even modify the registry if we wanted. It's a very powerful console, and as I said as well, it has that integration with some of the Azure services that we can start to enable and start to look at and bring down into our environment. So it can be really powerful for managing your Windows servers regardless of what they are, where they live. Now, another issue that Tailwind traders have or are worried about is making sure that their servers and all of their environment actually stays compliant and consistent with the company policies and some of the regulatory compliance that they need to maintain. And they're worried about splitting up their environment. They're worried about having to manage servers on-prem, servers in Azure, and potentially they might even introduce a third cloud or a second cloud, into the environment. So they want to make sure that they have something that can help bring everything together and just extend some of the services and make sure they're not managing their on-prem servers with one management tool. They may be looking after their Azure servers with another management tool, and the IT staff are having to look after different systems. This is where Azure Arc can actually come into play. Azure Arc can extend some of your Azure services down to your on-prem servers. So you can use Azure Management Plane for your security, for your consistency, for naming conventions, all of that kind of things for your Azure environment and your on-prem environment using Azure Arc. When you install Azure Arc onto your servers, you're starting to bring down those additional services. So things like Azure Sentinel, Azure Defender, Azure Security Center can all be used to monitor the security and enhance the security of your on-prem servers, as well as being able to use those services for your Azure native ones. And as you can see on the screen, it supports things like Windows Server, AWS servers, Ubuntu, Red Hat, all of those capabilities are there. We also have the ability to start to look after some of our SQL servers as well if we have them. We can start to install it on VMs or bare metal servers. We can look after the management of those servers. So if you've ever been asked to do an inventory of servers, then if your servers have Azure Arc enabled, what you can do is look into the Azure portal and see all of your Azure and Azure Arc servers there and pull out a list. You don't have to look at two different systems, pull those two systems together, then give out that report. You can do it from within Azure. So even some of those simple system tasks or some of those simple operating tasks that you do from time to time can be done using this kind of technology. So it's really powerful in terms of that. And then beyond that, we've got the governance and security. Like I said, you can use Azure Sentinel, Azure Defender, Azure Security Center on your on-prem servers. It's not just about your Azure servers either. Things like Azure Policy are great for ensuring that consistency from things such as maybe, trivial as what time your servers are set to. If you're based in Scotland, you obviously want your time zone to be reflective of that. And make sure all your servers have that basic element applied to them, along to complex things like firewall rules or ports or, who has access to it, who's within the administrator group, who's not within that administrator group. Things like that can really help within Azure Policy. And again, keeping that consistent between your several environments if you have Azure environment and you have your on-prem environment as well. Now, if we jump over into the Azure portal, what we can see is we have this on-prem server actually enabled for Azure Arc. We have two objects for the same server. We have the Azure Arc one, so this server has the Azure Arc enabled service on it. And if we look into this, we can start to see the same environment that we would expect with an Azure server. So we have the name of it, the operating system type. We can see things like extensions. We can install extensions from Azure onto this on-prem environment. And again, like I said, we can see the properties of that server. And if we scroll down, we've also got things like Azure Policy, Azure Update Management. We can extend all down to this server that lives on-prem. When it's at Azure SQL Server, you also get this Arc blade as well, which shows you a bit more detail about the SQL portion of the server. We can see the instance name, we can see the collation of the databases, we can see what TCP ports are open. Information is there as well. Within the environment health portion of it, you'll be able to get information about the SQL. We can do an assessment of that SQL server, have a look at it and see if there's anything we need to apply, or potentially if we wanted to migrate and move it to something else within the SQL portfolio or the Azure portfolio. We can do that from within here. And that's just some of the capabilities of Azure Arc. There are much more that you could go in detail. In terms of making sure that everything is kept up to date, that's also a challenge that Tailwind traders have. Again, they are worried about things not being patched, about how to manage all of that patching and making sure that it's as effortless for their staff. Tailwind traders have several maintenance windows for their servers, meaning that some of their staff has to work weekends or out of hours in order to apply the patches, and that can be a big burden on the staff rotation and on people's personal lives as well. So Tailwind traders are looking at how they can actually try and make that whole process much better and much more friendly for their staff. And this is where they're starting to introduce Azure Update Management into their infrastructure portfolio. Azure Update Management can help you patch your Windows and your Linux servers regardless of where those servers live. So again, it's a platform that can be extended beyond Azure to on-prem servers or servers that live in other cloud providers. Now with this, you can schedule what happens to your patches. So you can have a schedule that applies all your Windows patches after Patch Tuesday. You could miss out, say, the critical patches or the security patches that you didn't want onto those servers. And you can also schedule things like pre and post patching tasks. So if you need to stop services before you apply a patch, then you can do that. And then once the patches are applied, you can actually then re-enable that through scripting as well. Now, again, you can help speed up the process by allowing Azure Update Management to actually restart your servers. And that can help, again, like I said, with some of the management overhead that you have when you're patching servers. It means that maybe you don't need as many staff in over hours, or out of hours, sorry. And you can start to look after it more automatically rather than having your staff in as such. And as I said, it is capable of doing servers regardless of where that platform is. So Tailwind traders are looking to do this and implement this into their environment so that they can get a better handle on what's happening and have a better reporting system across the two environments that are going to end up having, with some servers living in Azure and some servers living in their on-prem data center. Here we are in the Azure portal and we're in the Update Management blade. What we're going to do is make sure that any server that is added to this Update Management portion now or in the future is actually added into Update Management, and then we can start to schedule some of the patches. Now, after a while, once the system updates that, you'll see the servers listed in that list below, and you could see that they had some red flags against them. What we want to do is schedule a deployment. So we're going to schedule a deployment for our Windows servers, and we pick the machines that we want. You could use a group, but in this case, we just have 2 servers in this test environment. So we're going to select those 2 servers and add them into this deployment schedule. As I said, you could change the classification patches that you apply, so you can exclude ones if you want. You can change the schedule settings as well here, so you can have a one-off patching schedule, or you could have a recurring one. So again, you could you set this up to recur every time Patch Tuesday happens, so once a month, once a week, whatever may be the right schedule for your environment. There's the pre and post script part that I mentioned, and there's also a maintenance window. So what Azure Update Management will do is calculate how long it needs in order to actually apply all the patches that are available or are needed for these servers. If it thinks it can complete within that maintenance window, then it will go ahead and do that task. If it doesn't think it will be able to complete within that maintenance window, it won't complete, meaning that you will have to manually remediate that, but it's also avoiding the fact that you'll end up with the server trying to maybe apply patches outside of that maintenance window, which could cause you production issues, or even rebooting itself outside that maintenance window. So it's something that you might have to learn and figure out and play with and trial and error with a few of your servers, but hopefully that gives you a rough idea of using update management in your environment. One of the next problems that Tailwind traders are looking to troubleshoot is actually sharing data with third-party companies outside of the organisation. Typically this is marketing. Marketing share it with some marketing research companies, external, or some consultants to help them. Now it's a bit cumbersome at the moment. Lots of people try and send the data through email, and due to file size limits that can be troublesome, and then it starts to bleed into shadow IT where people are using third-party products and data is just getting shared about too much. So IT have been looking at the Azure Data Share service, and they want to look at leveraging this. Now with Azure Data Share, you can share data across that organisational boundary with no additional infrastructure really set up. It can be governed with a central management portfolio. You can see where that data is going and who it's shared with. You can share data from things like your Azure SQL databases or your Azure Data Explorer, and then when the receiver receives the data, they can store that data in blob storage, Azure Data Lakes, Azure SQL. So again, the data can be quite easily accessed from them. So they're going to look at setting this up, and we've set up a quick demo. So let me have a look at the Azure portal and show you how this will work for them. So we have a demo database within Azure, so an Azure SQL Server database, and what they want to do is start to share some of the data from that within their environment. So they've already set up the data share, and they already have the data being shared with one other person. If we have a look at the data share, we can see what's already been shared. So we look at the sent shares, and we can see we have this sent share called share DB. Now, we've not put any best practice, so we've not got any description or terms of use. Ideally, you would want to put that in your production environment. Here we're sharing two tables from that SQL database. So those two tables, and only those two tables, are being shared with this third-party company. And you can see that they've activated their invitation to see that data, and it's currently happening as well. We can see how many times it's ran in previous times as well. So now we're in the third party's Azure subscription. So we can see this as received data or received shares. Now what happens is we have a bunch of information about what's been shared. So we can see those two source data sets are being shared. We can see them here, the same databases that were shared. We can see the snapshot schedule, so how often that data is being refreshed. We have it set up so that it's getting pulled every day, so we have fresh data. But we can also snapshot it. If we wanted to update that data right now, if we needed up-to-date data, we can do that as well by triggering it manually. This data is stored in an Azure Blob storage file at the third-party recipient's end, and that allows them to interact with the data. It's come through as a CSV file for them, and then they can download that and interact with it and transform it however they wanted. This gives you a pipeline of what's happening with your data. It allows you to share it with third-party companies without setting up additional infrastructure, and you can stop that data share happening at any time. So if you decide that you're stopping using that third-party company, then you can stop sharing that data and set that up within the Azure portal. You don't have to continue sharing it or wonder if they've maybe still got the username and password that you've sent out to several suppliers, and it's going to cause a lot of hassle if you changed it. So again, this is going to be a great innovation for Tailwind traders to be able to share data with third-party companies without worrying about extra additional infrastructure. Now, the last thing that Tailwind traders are actually looking at innovating around is security. And a lot of organisations, if not every organisation, is massively concerned about security and protecting their environments. And that's because, unfortunately, there doesn't a day goes by where we aren't hearing about a data breach or something that has happened. And it can be quite scary because if a bad actor gets into your environment, then there is no telling the untold damage that they can do. They can start to do lateral movements across your environment and really start to be destructive, either stealing data, deleting data, putting in ransomware that you aren't aware of, and just, abusing the resources that you have within your environment. And this is where Tailwind traders actually want to start using Azure Security Center to try and help strengthen their security posture, because Azure Security Center not only, again, supports Azure resources, it also supports non-Azure resources as well. Although they don't have a large footprint in terms of Azure and they're only using things like Azure servers and Azure Data Share, they potentially will be looking at using much more Azure services in the future. So they want to make sure that the product they choose for their security strategy is capable of handling all future integrations or future implementations in terms of what Tailwind traders do. Azure Security Center natively supports the Azure resources and workloads, so they are safe in helping to pick this for their future. They're future-proofing what's going to happen with their environment. One of the features they're excited to use is the Secure Score within Azure Security Center, because it gives them a good overview of what's happening within their environment as they start to mature. They're not entirely sure all of the features, all of the things that they need to protect against and worry about using a cloud environment. And that's where Azure Security Center and the Secure Score can really help them, because it gives you a quick overview of what's happening. If your Secure Score is 100, then you know your environment is at its maximum best and there's no other recommendations or security posture settings that you need to put in place in order to secure your environment. Whereas if your score is much less than that, you know there's still some work to do. And as Tailwind traders grow as an organisation using the cloud environment, and also as they grow their staff and people get more familiar with the security threats potentially available within the cloud and within just the day-to-day running of an environment in a cloud, then Secure Score can help them do that, because Secure Score will show you the vulnerabilities and it will also show you how to remediate those vulnerabilities and the impact that it can have on your environment. So again, a great feature to try and get you up to speed with a good security posture. Now, as I said, one of the concerns is they want to be able to support workloads currently and also future workloads, and Azure Security Center supports that. It supports Windows and Linux servers, and it supports things like containers and SQL and IoT. So no matter how Tailwind traders grow their environment in the future, they should have the necessary support built into Azure Security Center. And if any new features come on board in terms of other products outside of the Security Center, then they're very hopeful that Azure and Microsoft will help to build that native support within Azure Security Center as well. So they think they've made a good choice in helping to secure their environment and get a better security posture for their entire environment, regardless of where it lives. Now, if we have a look at this within the Azure portal, here we have a test environment set up to demonstrate some of the capabilities of Azure Security Center. We have, when we first log in, the Secure Score there telling us what's happening. But if we have a look at the inventory, we can quickly see what's happening with our resources, what's being monitored, what's not being monitored, what recommendations are needed for certain resources. So here we have a great view of what's not being monitored, so we can have a look in the future at preparing a change request and implementing monitoring for these resources, or understanding why they aren't monitored, if there's maybe an exclusion or an exemption in place for them. If we look at Secure Score, we can see the recommendations that are happening within this environment. We click on the view recommendations and see that list of recommendations about how we can increase our environment and how we actually go about that and what it will mean for our environment. You can obviously see there's some really red things there. We can see that we need to maybe look at encryption across some of our virtual machines, don't always have that. We can look at access rights. We can look at system updates. Things like log analytics agents should be installed on your virtual machines to help you with your update management. We can actually trigger that to happen. There's a quick fix button for that one, and it can apply it for you so you don't have to do that remediation yourself. There's also this regulatory compliance dashboard which shows you where you are on the road to some of these compliance statuses. So if you were trying to implement PCI DSS in your environment, you can use this as a guide if you've never done it before and you're not sure what to think about, or even you can use this as evidence to show your auditors that you are actually working towards this and where you are on that journey for PCI compliance. Thank you so much for taking the time to let me speak to you today. Hopefully I've shared some interesting features about how you can start to introduce Azure into your environment without necessarily migrating all of your environment into Azure, as Tailwind traders have done. Now, I mentioned a ton today, but there's much more than what I just mentioned. What I've done is compiled a list of resources across Microsoft documentation, some interviews with product teams, and also from Microsoft Learn, where you can go and learn some more and find out more about the products and features that I mentioned today. So please do go to the link on screen and have a look at that now. And also my contact details are on screen. Please do reach out to me if you have any questions or comments. I love to speak to anybody about the hybrid story that we have at Azure. Thank you again for watching today, and hopefully you enjoyed this session.